SBA talent sits in a different lane than traditional banking. A lot of people think, oh, if I can do credit at a traditional bank, then I can go and be successful in SBA. And I think it's a lot more than that. I kind of look at it as like structured chaos. I'm there talking to the revenue producers, I'm there talking to our chief operating officer, our chief credit officer in the weeds of the business. And I feel like when you stand back and you're like, oh, I'm just HR, like that's never going to work to be a successful HR person in a company.
My guest today isn't all about work. The reason why she blew my mind is I feel like she's one of a kind. She's smart and talented, and just how she handles everything. That's what we're going to talk about today. Work-life balance. What makes the SBA hiring process so difficult, or maybe like so easy? So my guest today is Brittany Lyons. She is the Chief People Officer at Port 51. So let's dive right in. Hi, Brittany Lyons. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for being on my podcast. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
When we first met, it was just kismet. And I definitely, you are one of the people in my last 18 years of recruiting who I've met that just, like I said in my introduction, you blew me away.
Thank
So
you.
we're going to talk about everything from being a mom to leadership. So we're going to jump right in. And so my first question to you, we just started working together.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that you worked for Exos. I was looking on your profile before.
Yeah.
But I hopefully I love working with you, and being a HR, well, you're more than HR. You're chief innovative and strategy, which I think that should be your new title.
Not chief of stuff.
Now, what makes SBA lending talent different from traditional banking? Do you
Yeah, I think that SBA talent sits in a different lane than traditional banking. So I think a lot of people think, oh, if I can do credit at a traditional bank, then I can go and be successful in SBA. And I think it's a lot more than that. I kind of look at it as like structured chaos. So you need people who can sell, structure, problem solve all at the same time. There's a lot of constant pressure, there's high volume, and you're dealing with real personalities. So in every single deal, you're dealing with the personality of the broker, the borrower. If you're lucky, you're dealing with both. And no two deals are the same. So you're never going to be able to wash and repeat from one deal to another. Obviously in traditional banking, there's a lot of numbers, but there's so much more that goes into the SBA world. And I think, talent isn't just technical. You need people who can operate in ambiguity. They need to move fast, but they also need to land the plane correctly at the end of the day.
That's hard to find, and I would like, I'm going to drift off for a little bit, but what I find in recruiting, you have the different personalities, but overall, what are the three traits that you look for? It could be a BDO or credit person. What do you look for? Three favorite traits in a SBA hire.
Yeah. I think I look for people who, you know, fit the culture. I think that's really important to us. So that have, integrity. We are never going to sacrifice volume for credit or anything like that. So someone who can respect the credit process is really important to me. I think somebody who can follow process is also very, very important, right? So as I said, structured chaos, but without the process, it becomes too chaotic. And then I also think someone who's hungry and intuitive and can, help move the platform forward is really helpful. Somebody who's going to come in with an individual contributor mindset for us is not someone who is necessarily going to be successful.
You're so spot on. You're so good. When I looked at your profile, and I know that you were, Exos and then Port, what have you seen over the years, like a hiring trend that's different from, back 5 years ago, let's just say? Well, there's the pandemic, but I mean, I guess overall from today.
I've only been in the industry for 3 years, so I don't want to date myself, but I'll try to imagine 5 years ago.
It's like
Um,
maybe not even because you've been doing this, your job for, well, this part, but you've been in people for so long.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter with SB, but like there's trends all over. So what do you
Yeah.
think
I
over?
think it's I think it's shifted from stability to experience. So I think 5 years ago and prior to that, people were looking for brand name banks, a huge base salary. What's my title? I want to be super duper managing director of the world, at Port 51 we don't put a lot of emphasis on hierarchy titles. It's more about the experience. So I think, candidates are really looking for flexibility. Am I going to be able to have work life balance, but also the flexibility to do my job? Transparent compensation. So how does a producer make money? What does that look like? Ironing out the comp plan. Strong operations and credit support, I think, is a really big one. If you have operational support that's slowing you down, that's not a good thing. And I also think like clear and consistent decision making from management. If you're saying yes to one deal and you're saying no to the same deal, it's really confusing, right? Like, how is that person going to be successful if the management team is not consistent in the decisions that we're making?
That's kind of like what I've seen lately is when I talk to BDOs, they're talking about the management structure and how it's
Yeah,
changing, and they aren't consistent.
yeah,
So that's one of the biggest challenges right now. I think in SBA is
yeah,
keeping consistent.
exactly.
The fun question is ready. So
Yeah,
when I hop on a call with a candidate and they say, "I'm making a move for money,"
yeah,
I'm like, "Nope." And so it has to be like all around. For
yeah.
some, when a candidate says that to you, one, what do you think? And then the follow up question is the worst interview you've had and the best interview you've
I think comp matters, right? But I don't think it's all about that. I'm never gonna fault somebody for wanting more money, right?
had. No,
um,
but when they
that
when they first say it, right?
yeah.
I think it's a turn off. I think
Yeah,
that
I agree, right? We're really big on culture here. I think to me, somebody, as I said, who's a cultural fit is more important to me. Like, let's talk about the comp later. That's the last question I always ask in an interview. It's my closing question. I never want to start with it. I've touched on some of this, but like trust and leadership, no micromanagement is really important, right? Like, if we don't trust our BDOs, then we probably didn't hire the right person. We need to be able to trust them to bring us quality deals. And then I touched on some of them, right? Like ops and credit support and things like that. What did you ask me? The worst interview that I've ever had.
like the best and the
Yeah,
worst. Because this is so fun for me because you're the first like people person I've ever
yeah,
brought up for doing
yeah,
it. But this is so fun for me. I
yeah,
mean, it's not gonna just you're I know you're honest and I know you're
yeah.
fun to work
I
with.
Yeah, I think, not one particular interview stands out to me, but when I get really excited is when I feel like I'm talking to a friend, right? Like someone that our energy matches. It's more conversational, right? It's organic, it's flowing. I, you know, and again, I don't even know if I can think of my worst interview. I'm sure there have been many. I think my top interview lasted 45 seconds, so that might have been the the worst one. When you just get a feeling and you're like, this is
This is
definitely
not gonna work. I just no.
not gonna work.
No.
But when you're watching the clock and it's like, oh my God, it's like pulling teeth to get information out of this person, or someone who just like doesn't wanna be in the interview. Like, why did you accept this meeting invite? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you want a job or not? Like, people that come off, like, annoyed that they're in an interview is brutal to me. But no, I haven't had too many scarring experiences that have stuck with me.
Man, we should write up. I could tell you stories
I could
like
too, yeah.
I mean, I spoke to like, and he was a little bit younger, and I'm like, and I would ask a question. He did that on the phone,
Mm,
and I was just,
yeah. The other thing that really gets me is when they, like, can't figure out the technology. It's like,
dude,
how are you gonna work here in our loan origination system if you can't, join a Google Meet? So,
no,
that's one of my pet peeves.
I like working with you because you're different. You're fun. Like I can tell you what, but what do you do that makes you just so different? What do you? I mean, I could, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm cool HR. No, I'm just kidding.
You are so
Um,
cool,
you
like
know
cool, Julie. If you retired your title tomorrow, you could run that company.
Yeah.
I mean, don't
Um,
put
yeah.
it there.
I don't sit on the sidelines. So I try really hard to operate like part of the business. And I think to operate part of the business, you need to deeply understand a couple of things. So what are the revenue drivers of your business? What's the deal flow? And also the bottlenecks. So in my everyday decisions, I'm trying to tie everything back to revenue and behavior. I'm there talking to the revenue producers. I'm there talking to our chief operating officer, our chief credit officer, in the weeds of the business. And I feel like when you stand back and you're like, oh, I'm just HR, like that's never going to work to be a successful HR person in a company. The other thing is I try not to be like a policy enforcer. That means making decisions on business impact and frankly, sometimes operating in a gray area or thinking outside the box. I think a lot of people think like these are the rules and HR is black and white, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think a common notion is that HR should just be a policy enforcer. And while that's true, I also think that you really need to help drive the company rather than just kind of living by the rules.
Well, again, one of the things was you are involved, like SBA, where I've spoken to. I'm not knocking a lot of anybody, but I'm just saying what makes you different is you know it,
Right.
and that's so cool working with you, and it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
I've spoken to other purchasing people where so
Yeah. I don't know how you could like recruit for your company if you don't understand your company and the intricacies of it and your industry. I wouldn't be a very good HR person if I wasn't able to sniff that out if I'm doing a first pass on candidates, right? And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what a BDO does. I don't understand credit." I think it's really important to understand your business to help drive it forward.
it is because a lot of the clients that I'm working with are hiring recruiters. But what I'm seeing is, I see these posting, and so in 1 minute I can find that person, but
Mhm.
they still go, no one, HR, that, so they don't understand, and so I think that's one of my frustrations right now, and the hiring manager's frustrations is exactly that. When you don't know what you're doing,
Right.
don't do it.
Right. And I
SB
think like you need a recruiter sometimes because you have ties into the industry that I don't have, right? And you are able to, I have a role, right? And you might say, well, I talked to this person for a different role, but they might be a perfect position for a role that you're looking for, right? So going back to thinking outside the box and just getting the right person in the seat, I think matters too, right? Like if you are looking to be, a BDA, but you haven't necessarily been a BDA by title before, let's still talk. Let's see if you're a good fit for the organization, if your experience works. I don't think it hurts to talk to as many people as you can.
I agree. I mean, recruiting SBA is just like, hi, I'm in Minnesota and I want an SBA like operations officer that knows USDA and fix their nose.
Yeah.
So I can find that. But
Yeah.
bottom line is you really got to understand what you're doing.
Yep.
My next question, actually, you're talking about policy. You're not a policy person, so what idea did you implement at Port 51 that works surprisingly well?
How much time do you have? All my ideas are wonderful. No,
They
just
actually, you know what? Everything you've said so far, that's why it's just, that's what's so great about you is because I know I'm gonna say that all the time.
yeah.
Is that you're easygoing, you're collaborative, you're approachable. And so you don't find that a lot, but I'm sure
Yeah.
one surprising idea that you have.
Yeah. So I think something that I implemented when I joined here that's worked really well. So I do one-on-ones with every single employee in the company 3 times a year. The one-on-ones are confidential, so I never go back to leadership and say somebody said this or somebody said that. The employees really enjoy it. It gives them a space to talk about things that they might necessarily not want to talk about with their manager. I take that feedback and I give it to leadership in aggregate. So common themes, patterns, what's working, what's not. And the leadership team really enjoys it because it gives us like a real-time pulse on the organization and really helps us align our leadership behavior with what employees are experiencing day to day. So it's kind of like, when I do these 3 times a year, until I do this again, I need you guys to periodically go back and look at the feedback. Like, what values do we want to instill as a leadership team when we're doing our day to day? And it's gone over really well. And I really enjoy them because I get to speak with new hires. I take notes. So one time I learned that somebody was like in the one-on-one, they were learning Mandarin. So the next time I tried to ask them a question in Mandarin,
Mandarin? That's funny.
and they were like, "Oh, yeah, that didn't go very far, I gave it up." I was like, "Oh, okay, never mind." But you also get to, like, they're 30 minutes, not a lot of time, but I get to learn about my employees, sometimes on a more personal level, which I really enjoy, like, "How are your kids? Did he get into the college that he was applying to?" So they've gone over really well, and we're gonna keep doing it.
I bet you it's a cool way of getting I was just gonna say, I bet you it's a really cool way of getting to know them in, like, different facets and different each time you do it, I'm sure you learn something new.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really interesting. Obviously, we're so intertwined with like closing and credit and sales. And so, I'll talk to one person in closing and they'll say something and I'm like, "Ooh, I can't wait to hear what underwriting has to say about that." It's almost like a detective game too. So it's really great. Everybody really enjoys them.
I love being a detective.
Yeah.
I love finding out what makes people tick.
Yes, me
And I
too.
and I but overall I just love being like I love finding
Mhm.